A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, from here in Germany, and a very good morning to Brazil. Bom dia a todos. Welcome to our webinar, Medical Technology in Brazil, New Business Opportunities for German Companies, and I'm really happy that you're my participants today. My name is Ines Barnhardt. I'm responsible for Latin America in the Department for International Cooperation at Baden-Württemberg International, and I will guide you through this webinar. Just in case you ask yourself where I am in the participant list on the right-hand side, I hide behind the webinar master. This is me. So first of all, this is my first webinar I'm handling. We had a trial webinar yesterday and we had some problems with the internet connection in Brazil. So we hope for the best that the technology will not give up on us throughout the next hour. I would like to inform you that we also record this webinar and also provide you with the link afterwards in case you want to have a look at it again or forward it to your business partners or others who might be interested in medical technology in Brazil. On the right-hand side, you can see a chat, and if you have questions throughout the webinar, please do not hesitate to write them down here, and please use the function all participants so the others can see your questions as well, and we are happy to answer them. So I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Bert, CEO of Braun Brazil with the headquarters in Rio de Janeiro, as well as Mrs. Luana Lima, who is responsible for market entry and business development at the German-Brazilian Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Rio de Janeiro. And from Sao Paulo, I would like to welcome Mr. Kenneth Almeida, Chief of Innovation, Research and Education at the German hospital Oswaldo Cruz, and Ricardo Castaño, who is responsible for market entry and business development services at the German-Brazilian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, located in Sao Paulo. During this webinar, we do not only want to talk about COVID-19. In fact, we want to focus on the medical sector in Brazil and show you which business opportunities exist in that market. In 2019, Brazil's medical technology market was growing for the third year in a row. And ABIMET, the Association of Manufacturers of Complex Medical Technology, expects an increasing demand of 3.9% for the complete year 2019, whereas for 2020, a growth rate of 5 to 6% was predicted. And after China and the USA, Germany is the third supplying country to Brazil. So just a few words about BWI. Baden-Württemberg International lends support to domestic and foreign companies, research institutions, and universities by serving as the center first point of contact in all questions relating to internationalization. We open up for foreign markets for Baden-Württemberg companies and profile the state globally as an ideal location for industry, business, and science. The relations between Baden-Württemberg and Brazil are very good. Brazil is the most important business partner for our federal state in Latin America. In 2010, the state of Paraná in the south of Brazil and Baden-Württemberg signed a contract for future cooperation between small and medium-sized companies, economic organizations, universities, and research institutions. And furthermore, a second cooperation was started with Pernambuco in the northeast of Brazil in 2014. Baden-Württemberg also has a representative office in Curitiba, the capital of Paraná. The representative office is organizationally linked to the Paraná Industry Association, the Sistema FIEP, and technically assigned to the Ministry of Economy, Labor and Housing in Baden-Württemberg. We have been working closely together with the German-Brazilian Chambers of Commerce and Industry in Sao Paulo, in Rio de Janeiro, and also in Porto Alegre for years. Thank you very much for this always very good and joyful cooperation. Over the last decade, we have organized numerous business delegation visits all over Brazil. We organized information events on the Brazilian market in Stuttgart, and we also received business visits from Brazil that want to get to know business opportunities here in Baden-Württemberg. And as of for today, it's our first webinar together. Our last business mission to Curitiba, Campinas, and Rio de Janeiro, the last week of March, unfortunately had to be cancelled due to COVID-19. So, however, today we concentrate on medical technology, and I would like to hand over the word to Ricardo in Sao Paulo. Who gives a brief overview about the Brazilian health system, as well as which role Germany plays in that sector. Ricardo will also point out the important requirements and registration process of medical equipment.
Yeah, so hello everyone. Thank you very much, Ines, for this opportunity. We are really happy to, at least be able to offer something for companies in Baden-Württemberg, even if the delegation had to be canceled. I met your colleagues in San Francisco some days before canceling the delegation, so we knew already, unfortunately, the world was under some stress and we had to cancel it. So hello everyone. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I want to give you an overview. Some of you I know are already active in the Brazilian market. Of course, some with production and a more robust participation in the market, and some others may be using distributors or representatives. So, but to have a common ground for this webinar, we thought it would be interesting to give a glimpse on some data about Brazil. So population, I'm not going to talk about all those topics you can see on the screen right now, but the Brazil market, so the population is still growing, not as fast as in the past, but still growing. And also the share of people like over 69 years. So the tendency is that it grows a lot in the next 20 to 40 years. So opening new opportunities for companies in some specific markets, in the health market, for example, right? We've seen a growth in the medical devices market share or market in 2018 and 2019. I've set it as a forecast because like the last data from some of the associations has not been published yet. So I just still count on the forecast. And health expenditure, I think it's important to know for companies that are not producing here, for example, that don't have all this data in their departments and so on. A very, very big part of the expenditure is private. So some overall data, Brazil has many labs, nurses, physicians, hospitals from the public side and from the private sector. So my goal here is not just to talk about some of the topics here, but really to give an overview and make sure that Brazil is not a very simple market in the health sector. It's a huge market with a huge size as a country, and also very different singularities from region to region, and you'll see it in the next minutes in my presentation, right? We have a public health system called SUS, Sistema Único de Saúde, which amounts now for about 70 or 73% of the population going for the solution because it's free for all that live here. So we have a lot of almost 500,000 hospital beds, a lot still in private hospitals and some in the public one. It's the largest and 8th largest health market worldwide, and for sure a very interesting market, full of challenges for German companies, but a very interesting market. Maybe some differences that we notice when supporting German companies in Brazil. Many want to know about public tenders, right? And in the public sector, I think Kenneth will be able to give you more detail about it and how it works, because I have huge experience on that, and maybe Bert also, I'm not sure what you're going to say about it, but it's very, sometimes it's we see in tenders some German companies are frustrated because it's mostly about price, right? So when you see the specification, then if it's if the tender is too widely described, then we know most of the times German companies have difficulties placing orders or proposals for those tenders because they happen to have a higher price in general. And normally in the private sector, I'm not now saying about hospitals or ministry buying or labs, I mean just overall in the health sector, we see that cost benefit ratio is plays an important role. negotiation. Of course, price is always important. I'm not being silly here, but we see more, we have more space and more room for negotiation where you don't have as much in the public sector. The medical device or the health sector in general is a very important one for Brazil. It's usually a very resilient market, right? And in Germany is the second largest exporter of medical technology devices to Brazil. Around almost 60% of our needs in the health sector comes from abroad. So it's important to notice that opportunities are here, right? If you talk to the Brazilian representative of the industry, they always say like we are always lagging behind. So of course, a lot of Brazilian production is sold in Brazil, but still the demand we have is higher. So we are highly dependent on imports for the health sector in general. One more important thing, at least in my opinion, is some trends in the market. We've seen a verticalization of the market, some new players trying to offer as much as possible under one roof, right? So trying to increase margins and to shrink some of the costs, being a powerful group. And I think this will be a trend that we'll see still developing in the next years, maybe not with mergers and acquisitions as it happened in the past, but with own organic growth from the players in the market. Some of the trade balance in 2018, because 2019, some of the numbers are still unclear, to be honest. We import about $4.3 billion, and this is how this is divided. Our exports are very weak if you take a look on the numbers, but still representative for the sector. We have a very organized sector, especially for medical devices in Brazil, from Brazilian companies, and which also join Brazilian pavilions abroad. So they're quite organized, but still exports are not as strong as other countries. A little bit about the distribution of hospitals and beneficiaries of the private health sector. As you can see, the southeast part of Brazil, which includes states like São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, and Espírito Santo, concentrate a very, very high amount of the private hospitals in Brazil, and also the biggest share on private beneficiaries of health insurance in Brazil. The private sector is, in my opinion, and please, Bert and Kenneth, if you have different opinions, be free to tell them if you want. But I think for newcomers, mostly, it's a very, very important market to be worked on, first of all, and then also for sure with the partners or with a non-initiative go further to the public sector. Some of the most important hospitals in Brazil, for sure, the German hospital, which is also part of this webinar today, and some other names that are really, really famous, like Sírio-Libanês, Albert Einstein Krankenhaus, hospital, and Rede D'Or in Rio and São Vicente. We have about 47 million people of the Brazilian population with some private insurance protection, right? So in a population of over 210 million, there's still a huge potential for growth, right? This number fluctuates a lot whenever we have a crisis, because most of this, as you can see, most of the total comes from insurance offered by the employers. Some of the distribution also in Brazil for doctors, we have a quite broad amount of doctors in Brazil, but you can see the highest concentration of them in total is in the southeast region, basically here when I'm pointing, and also in the northeast part of Brazil. So the coast, where how we call it sometimes, is where it concentrates, but four states concentrate almost more than 40% of the doctors in Brazil. Also, some ideas or input on the specialists and general practitioners, which is interesting in Brazil, is that most of the doctors here, after completing university, they start for some extensions and they become specialists, and this configuration as general practitioners is probably going down in the near future, because the market doesn't really want this kind of professional only anymore. A little bit of in the state of São Paulo, as you can see, we have here about 126,000 physicians, and almost half of it is concentrated in one city of São Paulo, so the capital city. So here you can see, you probably have my presentation later, you have some data about the different specialization areas of these physicians here for São Paulo. Yeah, public expenditure. Also, these three states are concentrate a higher amount of the expenditures. I'm not going to invest more of the time here. So Anvisa, our regulatory affair agency, is a headache for many companies. Now they have implemented a lot of different and just preliminary actions for imports of everything related to COVID-19. But in general, this is the agency in Brazil that is responsible for registering products for the health market, right? So mostly from risk 3 to 4, it's necessary to have a registration, and some class 2 products as well. And for the class 1, risk class 1 is basically much easier. So if anyone wants to talk about it later, we can do it as well. Just a glimpse on how the flow of the registration is. Here it's kind of complicated, but you can see it later. But basically, I think the most important thing to comment on this is that companies in Brazil made us, even if it's an international company producing here or established in Brazil, or the partner company here is the company that detains the registration of the product, not the exporter, if they are not present in Brazil with their known company. So some opportunities to summarize before we pass on to the next speakers. As I said, about 60% of the medical technology or health products come from abroad. And I think German products in general have a very, very high standing in Brazil. So having the correct business model for entering the market is a good way to go, and opportunities are here for sure, right? So how to do direct exports, or should I establish a company? Can I cooperate with distributors? Many of these options are possible, but I would say if you have a very competitive market, you should pay attention, because then you're going again back to this price policy and price pressure that we see from many of the clients. So just to summarize and finalize my presentation, as I know I just 2 minutes longer than planned. I think in many cases, if the company is not too small, as we've seen with many companies, it's really important to have it's really interesting to have a known company established in Brazil, to have the registration and the control price policy, and also take care of the product itself themselves in Brazil. So we have many member companies that have done it. So some invested 1 or 2 years just organizing everything, organizing distribution network, and then now they have like 5,000 products registered and ready to go to the market, and they control everything. No one imports, just them. So I think it's a good opportunity for them. Right, and if it's not possible, if the company is too small, for sure, the standard distribution networks are still the way to go. But just please keep in mind that you're not the owner of the registration related to Anvisa, but the partner, and that could bring some consequences in the future if this partnership doesn't go well. Right, so some of our portfolio here, which is similar to Rio, and now I'm done with my part. Sorry for the 3 minutes longer I took, Inez and colleagues, but I'm done now.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Ricardo. Are there any questions so far? So, if so, please use the chat for asking. I would like to move to Rio de Janeiro and continue with Luana. So what are the business opportunities during that special time of COVID-19, but also beyond COVID-19?
Yeah, Ines, thank you very much also from my side for this opportunity. I would also like to briefly thank also Bert and Kenneth for taking their times for speaking us and also adding value to this webinar. So I will briefly give you some highlights of the business opportunities we have identified for German companies in medical technology in Brazil. And two main points. The first, of course, in the sense of the COVID-19 we are facing, the many challenges. And what we identify is that is there a high demand for instant products such as surgical masks, face shields, disposable hospital clothing, valves, circuits, connections, and this kind of goods. But what you need to consider is that for these products, the most important factors are the price and the delivery time, right? So it's high. They are high demanded products, but you also need to consider for which price and in which time you can deliver it. So we know, of course, China is supplying the biggest part of the world, but we also identified there could be some opportunities for the German companies because we know China cannot supply the whole world. So this one on this side could be some opportunities for German companies and also for more products with added value, technical products like the famous ventilators and respiratory equipment. So they are still demanded in Brazil. They have a high demand also, but the Brazilian government has done a big effort to reorganize the supply chain, the local supply chain, in order to produce more ventilators and also to repair and to do the maintenance. So just an example, the Brazilian government has bought, the public health sector has bought 14,000 local equipment, ventilators and respiratory equipments from local companies such as KTK, MagnaMed, Ventlogos, Leistung, also the German company Dräger. And an important factor is that, as I said, the supply chain has been modified, so we can see some cases where aircraft industry in Brazil are providing the most complex components of this medical equipment that used to be before supplied by Switzerland or the USA. So also, the automotive industry are providing, repairing and doing the maintenance in almost 4,000 equipments, ventilators and stuff for providing. So we see on the side of the public health sector, there's been this big effort, but there's still a big demand also on the side from the private health sector. So what we recommend regarding the COVID for the private sector is that you check particularly for your product and with each private agent, what is their current demand, right? So beyond the COVID-19 crisis, I mean, let me just give some highlights regarding the efforts for the admission procedures that is being facilitated in Brazil before. So already in February this year, the government released a legislation concerning all the measurements for the COVID crisis. So as Ricardo already mentioned, the dispensability of the tender process for new and second-hand products and services directly related to the treatment of the cases. And also for medicines and medical equipment that are still not registered at Anvisa, our Brazil surveillance agency. They are allowed if they have been already registered by any international surveillance agencies or directly prescribed by the Brazilian health ministry. So this is a facilitation process. On the other hand, Anvisa, our surveillance agency, has also issued 2 resolutions in order to facilitate the registration process for new medical equipment, mainly ventilators and respiratory equipment. It's a kind of a fast track with the validity of just 1 year. So Anvisa has also eased the production and import licensing process, but as I said before, and I think my colleague would also agree with me, all procedures need to be analyzed in a one-by-one case procedure. So also the certification process by Inmetro has been temporarily suspended for some products, but the tests and all the technical requirements such as labeling, descriptions and stuff are still being demanded. With regards to the taxes, we see there's been a suspension for more than 300 products currently on the tax on industrialized products, IPI, and also on the import taxes. So with all these particularities and information, our recommendation, of course, is to treat these facilitations on a case-by-case approach. And now, of course, beyond the COVID crisis, because we know and hope that we'll get through this crisis as soon as possible and see in the near future what is the business opportunities for the German companies. We see 2 main fields with the biggest opportunities with regards to the e-health, which means the use of the information and communication ICT with data processing, monitoring to facilitate the health improvement and the healthcare services. And also, of course, the telemedicine. As you know, Brazil is a country with continental dimensions. Only to mention, nowadays the most affected cities and country and states in Brazil with the COVID are the more isolated ones. So we see that the telemedicine could bring a very deep development in the sense of the medical technology. So, so far, there's been a decree for the regulation of the telemedicine during the COVID, but there are many, the regulation of the telemedicine in general and e-health in Brazil are still under discussion. So our recommendation, of course, is that German companies get an early positioning. So that when there's a definite legislation and regulation about it, you have already market presence, you found already your business partners in Brazil and got also to know the market in its particularities. So other very important factor in Brazil is that the demographic aging. So the Brazilian population are getting older and older, and as a consequence, we see a higher demand for high-tech medical and laboratory equipment, so as also pharmaceutical products. In a big demand also, we see that the medical and laboratory equipment of high technological value, as I said already, are in great with demand for all in the private sector. So we're talking here about equipments that can give a more efficiency to the process, more quicker results in a short time, also to make the procedure for the patient more pleasant. So as Ricardo, my colleague, already said, the Brazilian private sector is mainly in the southern part of Brazil, are for the private sector state of the art. So the customers have high demands, higher requirements, and that's why also many tests and the market introduction of new products of international companies are also done sometimes in Brazil. To finalize my part, last but not least, as a part of the German Chamber network, We have more than 100 years presence here in Brazil, and we know the particularities on the country and recommend that the German company, they find a local partner for the regulatory issues and also for the market entry gain of the market share, right? Only an experienced local partner can foster this implementation process and acceptance of your product and your service in the reference hospital and labs. Also, our recommendation is to take, of course, a business trip now, not now. Currently, we are working in a virtual basis, but since we got through this crisis, to take a business trip, it's very important in Brazil. This face-to-face contact, shaking hands, it's very relevant for us. Also to take part in the most important congresses and fairs in Brazil, where many of the new products and services are released every year. And finally, to contact the German Chamber Network in Brazil for support in this market entry. And also to get updated of the new informations in this sector, we also recommend GTAI, German Trade and Invest, is also present in Brazil, and they issue on a regular basis articles and reports with regards to the medical sector. So if you have any questions, please feel free to address me an email or to make a question in your chat, and I will be happy to answer you with help of my friends and the two speakers, which are also very experienced in Brazilian medical sector. Ines, I will now hand over to Bert.
Perfect.
Bert, please. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Luana, for this really detailed information. And yes, let's move on with Bert from Braun. He will tell us how Braun handles the current situation and also which new business opportunities came up for the company. Please, Bert.
Yes. Can you hear me? Very good. Sure. Yeah, hello. Very quickly, my name is Bert Bender. I'm the COO of Braun here in Brazil. And I live here in this wonderful city of Rio de Janeiro with my family, with my wife and my two kids. And yeah, I would like to give you a very quick context for those who don't know who Braun is. Braun is a German medical devices and pharmaceutical company with a presence in 65 countries worldwide, with an annual revenue sales of 7.5 billion, a production network of in 20 countries worldwide, and 65,000 employees worldwide. What do we do here in Brazil? We are 100% subsidiary of Braun, and we have two main areas here. What we're doing, the first area is that we are responsible for the distribution of the worldwide production of Braun exclusively in Brazil. And the second part is that we have 3 large production facilities here located in Rio de Janeiro. And if we look at the structure of our company, we can say that about 50% of the products which we are selling here in the Brazilian market are products which we're producing here locally in Brazil, and 50% are imported products from the international network. What is the situation with COVID? I mean, the main topic of this call is not COVID, but I think it's very important to also give some insight in that. And we took very early measures, also internationally defined, to really mitigate the risk of an infection of our employee population, and therefore we went into social distancing home office at a very early stage. And as of today, I think we're in home office for 7 weeks. However, as of our 1,500 employees, over 900 are working in services and production. These can obviously not work in home office. So we have a large part of our population that is actually coming every day to our office here in São Gonçalo, to our production sites, to our distribution center in Guaxindiba, and also in the regional offices. And here we implemented hygiene concepts in order to really minimize the risk of any infection. And so far, I think I'm happy to report that as of today, we have 0 cases of COVID in our population. We had in total 100 people under monitoring for suspicious symptoms, but a large part of that has been released by now. And in total, I think right now, as of today, we have about 40 cases which we have in quarantine for suspicious situations. So I can say in general that also we took early measures to stock up on critical production import factors, and based on that, we are very confident right now that we will be able to keep our productions here, continue to keep our productions on full capacity throughout the crisis. Why is that so important? Obviously, we have three main focus areas during the crisis. The first area is obviously the well-being of our employees. The second focus area is to continue supplying our highly critical products during this crisis. And the third one obviously is then the economic consequences out of the situation. The products which we're producing here at the location in São Gonçalo in Rio de Janeiro, all are products which are highly relevant to the COVID situation. When we talk about COVID, everybody talks about ventilators. But the second very important part of the COVID treatment in an ICU bed is obviously the automated infusion therapy, which we're the market leader in Brazil. We're here in São Gonçalo, we're producing large volume parenterals, about 20% of the total market. We are producing the infusion lines, and also we are producing, and also we are the market leader in infusion pumps. So obviously this is highly critical when it comes to the treatment of COVID patients now. This is why our focus is really to be able to, let's say, the continuation of the supply of our customers here to ensure, let's say, the mitigation of the crisis. Yeah, what will come beyond the crisis? I think my evaluation right now for Brazil is that a lot of specialists say that this week is the week of the peak. I think we have now a stress situation in ICU beds in hospitals, but I don't think the situation will develop as dramatic as we saw, for example, in Italy and Spain. And then I think beyond the crisis will obviously be to deal with the economic impact of the situation, because in Brazil, in addition to the fact that now for 2 months, more or less, revenue streams of our customers, of hospitals, are significantly reduced. We also are facing the situation of a significant devaluation of the reais, and in our sector, even the local produced products are very much subjected to currency changes, as raw materials are also very much currency indexed, and obviously all of the imported products are 100% currency indexed, and obviously that puts the big economic strain on the system. The second part is obviously that in the second wave we will see that what is very common in Brazil, that people will fall out of the private health system because they will be losing their employment, which will again lead to a reduction in revenue streams to the health insurers. And putting all of this together, I think this is really the challenge that will come now after the acute crisis, to really manage that situation in Brazil. So I think if we now look at the future, so this is for me now, let's say my main occupation, that all market players, obviously also led by the government, must find a solution for this situation. And we have the discussions worldwide right now, but this is obviously something that has to be done. And I think our role is really that I believe that the world will be different after this. And one of the main differences is really that I think the Brazilian system will have to go for more value in the way the health system is being structured. So I think what we as an industry must really be able to provide the system value cases to say, okay, how can we really manage therapies obviously with the optimal and a clinical outcome, but at the same time, it really in an efficient way in treating the process. I think if you want to be a partner in the future of the Brazilian private health system, but also of the public one, you must be able to answer these questions. Yeah, because the next 2 to 3 years will obviously force the system to become much more efficient, and I think we will see a very fast development that the health system, the reimbursement system, all of these things will really change dramatically. Yeah. Are my 10 minutes up, or should I add anything more?
You can add something to the supply chain, what we talked about yesterday.
Yes, the supply chain, I think this is very, very, very positive. I think when we always look at challenges in the crisis and opportunities in the crisis, what we really have experienced is that the famous institution of Anvisa, which is here our medical institution, has really taken a very positive, a very pragmatic stance in really going through very fast regulatory procedures in order to bring critical items to the market, to the hospitals. To give you one example, hand disinfectants are also part of our very critical portfolio. Hospitals need a much higher hand disinfectants than what you would need in other institutions, as a medical professional, a doctor or a nurse, has to disinfect their hands 300 times a day. So you really need something which is highly tested in order to ensure that you will not have any irritations or anything like that. And Braun has a long competence in that, in its competence center, Center of Excellence in Switzerland. And we brought a new recipe, which is based 100% on Brazilian ingredients from Switzerland. So a proven recipe that is being used worldwide for many, many years, and implemented this year within 40 days. And Anvisa gave us the registration for that product within 48 hours. And right now we're producing that product and delivering to our customers. Yeah, 100% Brazilian ingredients, so not being dependent on international supply chains. So I think this is a very valuable experience. I think to all of us, that we need to have somewhat a balance between internationalization but also local capacities in order to, I think, deal with these kind of situations. And so far, I have really seen that Anvisa has taken a very progressive stance on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Bert, very much for this information. Are there any questions so far? So we are also answering questions right now. Just like put them in the chat, and we are happy to answer them. So no questions at the moment. Everything seems clear so far. And then we hand the microphone over to Kenneth, located at the German hospital in Sao Paulo. And Kenneth will give us some details about the cooperation between Germany and Brazil, as well as about the innovation and development process.
Thank you, Inés. Thank you for inviting us to share some experience about this, of course, the period we are living. It's been a very strong experience for all of us in the many places we are. Actually, for us, for the hospital, it's a period, it's a complex period, but we are prepared to. So it's good to be here to share some information about the market in Brazil and, of course, opportunities we can have in this situation, of course, talking about the COVID, but not only for that. Well, who we are, and who we are in this place as a hospital. As a first and an important information here, we are not for-profit private hospital. We are founded by German, as you can see in the Austrian and Swiss community in the period you can see in the screen. We have more than 3,000 members here directly working with the health system. We have 2 units here in São Paulo and 1 in Santos, in the state of São Paulo. We are considered a big hospital because we have 800 beds specifically to this operation of health. The model of relationship between the physicians and the hospital is quite complex and specific here in Brazil. So we have almost 4,000 physicians working with us, not necessarily with a direct contract, but this is very good because when we talk about this movement we have here in our routine, they bring many opportunities in our market. We have a big area, as you can see, and I'll share with you the main concept we work here is vocation to care, the patient and the family is our main concern. Of course, we are, as we are profit, we are very interested in have results, but all the results we have must be reinvested in the operation we have. So that's a very important thing, that we just make sure in our operation that we have a patient-centered process. On the other hand, try to bring resource to keep improving this process. Okay, so let me share. Ricardo told about that, but it's always interesting to strengthen that information. We have a lot of necessities here. We're talking about 200 million people assisted by a public health system. We have economic industrial health complex that's struggling to grow and trying to make some policies to do that. But unfortunately, lately we are not. I'm not sure we are having this policy directly intelligent, if I can say so. But on the other hand, there's a big hospital and an excellence hospital. We can influence the Ministry of Health. We discuss with them the horizon of technologies, the assessment, and all things like that. So as you can see in the figure at the right, we have a lot of necessities in our market. We are talking about for the forecast is the fifth market in the world in 2023. But on the other hand, the production is only 1% in this case for pharmachemicals, for example. So what we are trying to do as a big hospital, excellence hospital here, with a direct relationship with the Ministry of Health, we improve the process of assessment of technologies, new health technologies. They would like to evaluate in this process. We have here a well-established HA process. I can say so. We have a group that's working directly with the Ministry of Health. I'll share some video to show that this process is organized. But on the other hand, as Bert told us before, in the past, we have many, the scale of growth of evaluations is too large for us. So in this spirit of, for instance, we're facing some changes, and I think this is good. Okay. Oh, one more information here, just to forecast the market here in Brazil for health. On the other hand, we have a low capacity to develop innovation. I'll share with you this picture here that shows us that we have a relatively good number of universities evaluated. Okay, we have scientific relevant production, not necessarily too big, but interesting to see that we have many people well formed and trying to make science here. But as you can see in the patents, we don't have a large number. On the opposite, this is a very good information because probably we have here a good opportunity to bring technology and organizing the process with big companies trying to transfer technology and keep in mind that this is very interesting. Ricardo, could you show us the video, please? There's a video very interesting about the process we evaluate the technology. Okay, this video was produced by our team in demand of the Ministry of Health, for instance. So we have 135 published guidelines, 36 about rare disease, as you can see. All the decisions are taken based in systematic reviews and economic analysis and complex HTA. I can say so that directly because we have a large number of professionals here in Hospital Alemão, German hospital, that work with that. We are the main partner of the Brazilian Ministry of Health on that. We are evaluating medicines, diagnostic tests, medical equipments. For instance, I'm just look for a picture here. We evaluate the initiative of some engineers who are producing mechanical ventilator for lung problems, for instance, this morning or early today. Well, this is a very interesting information. I believe it's an organized process and participate directly. Well, in what we can see in this situation here in this webinar, of course, the Chamber of Germany and Brazil is responsible for this relationship. But what we can see is probably in the future some points of a relationship, trying to discuss business model and artificial intelligence. We are doing that, for example, digital twins with Oracle today. We're developing that for the Brazilian market, and we have a startup brought by them, and we are developing that. Machine learning, we are doing that with Cisco, for instance. They have equipment of
Kenneth?
Yes, of Anvisa, for instance, to develop a large study, research with the new medicines they would like to evaluate. Well, we have many opportunities to bring this relationship points to opportunities here in Brazil. In our main point here, it's the AHK is our point of relationship with you if you need some more information to discuss things like that. As you can see, we have another information, things we are doing at this moment. We have an excellent hospital. It's a stamp here in Brazil. Only 5 hospitals have here in Brazil. German hospitals, one of them. This means that we can work, we can use our taxes, for instance, to develop research studies and develop products and things like that in direct relationship with Ministry of Health, since they need this information or research or study. We do that together, and as you can see, we have many opportunities here. And as I said before, I think Ricardo is our point of a relationship. Okay, that's it, guys.
Thank you very much.
Reference.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Some of you just informed us that you had problems with the video link, so we will provide you with the link afterwards as well, so you can have a look at it again. So just put your questions in the chat and we are happy to answer them.
And we also have the possibility, if anyone has a question, that we can activate them to speak freely also with the camera, right?
So don't be shy, just ask.
Join us, ask us.
In the meantime, I want to call your attention to the Hospitalar in Sao Paulo in May 2021. This trade show is the most complete and specialized healthcare fair in Brazil and Latin America. And the Hospitalar is a multi-sectoral event which covers all health sectors and provides good businesses throughout the production chain. The Hospitalar connects the market and brings together buyers and suppliers of the sector, promoting networking and partnerships. Baden-Württemberg International might plan a joint booth on that trade show next May. Of course, we do hope that international travel will be possible again by then. And being a participant at our Baden-Württemberg joint booth means that you take part like a normal exhibitor, but with less organization, as we take care of all of the details for you. We provide you with a ready-for-use exhibition stand with also small sizes, and we position your company on the booth with a really good visibility. And there is also a common meeting area for shared use, which includes drinks and snacks. We also registered you to the trade fair and the regular marketing activities of the organizer. And we support you with marketing such as exhibitor brochure and also social media marketing. So if you are interested in taking part, please let me know so we can go ahead with planning. And I see that Juan, he's asking if the Hospitalar will take place this year. Ricardo?
So officially the trade fair has been postponed to the second half of the year, but without a specific date. So I think there's a huge chance that they will postpone it again and just offer the show in 2021, or offer a kind of a hybrid option like some trade fairs are doing around the world, with some digital conferences or something like this. But I don't think it's going to happen as they planned for May 2020 in the second half of the year. It's still unclear.
So there is another question. How do you evaluate the medical technology market growth in 2020-21 now that the Brazilian GDP forecast has decreased?
Should I give my opinion, or maybe the other speakers want to say something? Bert, Kenneth, Luana, as active guests.
Maybe Ricardo, you want to give your opinion?
Okay. So
otherwise
everybody left, or I think they are trying to activate the mic. Every time you activate it again, everything closes, and then your webcam shows up again. It's a good question, to be honest. I think even Gloria Rosa, our GTAI correspondent, is typing something. I think it's still very early to say, but in general, I think it's going to be steady, not much development, negative or positive this year. It's going to be kind of stable, right? Because there are lots of things being bought for the coronavirus crisis. And of course, some of their stuff are still being sold, even if the revenues of hospitals, for example, is not very high at the moment. But I'm not sure if the market's going to shrink. I think it's going to be stable. But
My answer is really that right now we don't work on any forecast for 21. We are wondering how to survive this year. It's the reality. I think what happens now, what I just described, is that obviously we have to talk to our customers. We have to talk to the hospitals, and I think that on the one hand, certain products were stocked up now because of the crisis. And other products obviously are not being used right now, as all of the general surgeries have been postponed. So I think that has to be managed now in a first step, and this is why I really expect a roller coaster ride for the next couple of months. And then I think the outlook for the future is right now. I mean, I'm really, you're asking the wrong person. I think it's very difficult to answer. I think the good news is always that our sector is very crisis resistant, so we don't take so much of the peaks and we don't take so much of the valleys. So in that sense, I'm not a pessimist. Don't get me wrong, but I also think that we have to be realistic about the situation the world is in right now. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about GDP decreases of over 10% in developed economies, and this will have a impact, and it will even have a higher impact in BRICS states, and will have a big impact on Brazil. And I think we will all have to manage this in the time to come.
Yeah. So if I can add a question to Kenneth, do you think that most of these surgeries, general surgeries that had to be canceled because they were not an emergency, will come very quickly after the quarantine has some flexibility, or do you think they're just canceled? How do you see the development after the crisis for these kind of procedures?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because since last week we just saw our demand on that kind of surgery, electives surgeries are growing, because people, they can stop that, they can hold for a period of time, but they have the necessity. So what we are trying to do, if you can see that the media here in Brazil just was asked about, and our CEO just told a good answer, that saying, well, people need that. So in some moment they will return to do that. We have chronic patients that must be followed in this period, and they are coming to the hospital and ask you, okay, let's, how can we do that? On the other hand, what we are trying to figure it out is how to use technology to make some kind of a wall with this pandemic and pandemic periods. Telemedicine, for instance, is growing here as a hospital. So our innovation area, we never work it as we are doing now, discussing new equipments and new medicines. And our research team, each day we have more and more interest in our physicians and companies, big companies, asking us, can we develop new therapies with, genetics? And well, what I told a journalist yesterday from CNN, I said, we never work it as now. So I believe that the demand will be kept. People needs health. The government's more open to develop this kind of technology. The barriers are in such a interesting process. They are, keep not so big as before. And I see as an opportunity. Of course, I'm telling as innovation and research responsible here in the hospital. So I see in the good way that.
Kenneth, there is another question for you. We heard that the price is one of the most important factors, especially for the public health sector. How do you see future demand for German products, considering that Chinese?
I believe Gloria.
It's from Gloria.
Yes, it's from her. Yeah.
Considering that Chinese products are gaining market shares from year to year, so how do you consider the price?
Yeah, you know what? I can say that about Chinese products and technologies. We are working with a big company from China, and then brought us a system that diagnoses the COVID, for instance, at this moment in less than 1 second would they have the answer in the screen. So we tested that, and we were very surprised about the accuracy about the system. So they are preparing themselves. They prepared themselves for this situation, I believe. So they are bringing more and more answers for our industry. But on the other hand, we can see that there's a gap of understanding of our necessities. So that's why, for instance, in the past, we discussed it with many companies here in Brazil for German identity, because the process is more organized, the understanding of the market is more, we have a process to do that. So let me try to translate what I said before. I believe the Chinese have very good technology and products. They are growing that quality in the process, but the approach is not very good. I can say that because I'm dealing with them right now. So I think there are, but here in Brazilian market, we have a lot of space for many companies, and of course, German identity is a differential, we believe.
Yeah, maybe I can also add to this. I think the question should not be, is it Chinese or German or European or US product? I think the question should be, is the market ready to evaluate really value and not only price? Yeah, and I think that one of the very important lessons learned from this crisis is that obviously infection prevention, for example, inside a hospital is a huge topic, especially when you have the danger of a COVID spread inside your hospital. So you need a certain quality level of an IV set, for example, to ensure that. So I think whoever can explain that to a customer, that there is value in spending more because such a product is more expensive. And then the question will not be, is it a German product or a Chinese product? The question is, will the hospital be going for that value proposition? And I think that so far the honest answer is that the state, the public tendering system is really not ready for that yet. Yeah, there is no such specification. I mean, we're even having discussions with Anvisa that there's no control whatsoever, for example, on the quality level of IV sets that are being imported into Brazil. So basically, you can just sell anything, and they are really quality levels which are completely unacceptable. Yeah, but so I think that hopefully is one of the lessons that we will all be learning, that when we're treating with the health of patients, that we need to ensure that we uphold the minimum safety standards on this machinery and everything what we are using. And I think in the long run only these market players can survive. And I think the system starts to understand the value of that. And when I'm saying that, I'm not referring to Oswaldo Cruz now, that has been doing that for many years, and then other reference hospitals. But I mean, the market as a whole still used to have the tendency to really go to these very low quality products, which are plain and simply dangerous for the patient. Yeah.
So if there are no further questions at the moment, I would like to close the webinar. If you have more questions afterwards, you can still send us an email. You see our email addresses here, my email address, the one of Luana, and also Ricardo. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do hope you liked our webinar and you received some valuable information for yourself and also for your company. I want to thank my speakers for their input on that special sector. And I wish you a happy public holiday tomorrow. So here we have 1st of May tomorrow, so it's a day off. And also stay healthy, please.